Welcome everybody to this week's Empower Break. We are excited to join you or for you to join us today. It is Wednesday, the 22nd, and I'm so excited for today's conversation because we like to talk about these things. So I want to first welcome all of you and now welcome my guest, Madelin Santana. Welcome, Madeline. How are you good? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am so happy to be here with United Latinas.
What? Yes, yes. So I love today's topic. Today is the power of yo soy, the power of I am, and leveraging your inner critic. So this is going to be, I'm excited to dive in to this conversation. First, give us a little background on you.
Yes, so I am Caribeña. I am from Dominican Republic, and I grew up there. Went to school, went to college, and then I decided when I was 21 to come to Boston. Interesting enough, then I lived more here than in my own country. Now you're guessing my age. And I am a marketer by profession, and I became a researcher. So I do a lot of research and conferences about leading within, leading out, leading across, leading up, all those executive leadership topics that are, to enhance influence and impact. So it's amazing and beautiful where my journey has led me.
I love it. I love it. So when did you first get into personal development?
I think since I was little, essentially, there's five intelligence in any woman's life, even when you're a kid. You have the intelligence of your health. I call it intelligence de salud, the intelligence or the relational intelligence, the intelligence about your finances, the intelligence about your spiritual inner being, and lastly, the intelligence of that adaptability. And sometimes you might resonate. One intelligence might be very challenging for you, and health was one of them. Being healthy was really, I was very sick as a kid. You ask all my auntie and uncles, and they essentially say, hey, Madeline was so enfermita. And I have to develop myself to flourish in the rest of the intelligence despite that my health was so fragile. So the power of your soul became and resonated since I was little. What are the things that I needed to look at self leadership? Look inner. My gran yo soy embraced me as I was, being curious about it, and then essentially express it.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's funny. As little kids, I think we think more. We are more. We're riskier. We think bigger thoughts. We think like things are impossible until life tells us, "Hold up, slow your roll. This may not be possible for you." And I'm including the people around us, maybe el culturo, maybe some family members and or nearby, neighbors, kind of thing. If you grew up in like a little town, but so that it takes a lot for someone to say, what the status quo is, right? Or the thinking around minorities back then, especially, right? We were considered, or culturally, even in our own culture, we were
Mhm.
considered second class, and we almost owned that title for a little bit, right? I think that it was just the idea, and we had to fight it. And I think our generation specifically kind of started breaking that up, the idea that no, we're not second class, we are more that, which delves one into digging deeper to what is possible. So what were some of the first things that you did to unravel that, right? To give you that information to believe that it was possible.
Yes, that's so true, especially coming to the US. English is my second language. You can look at me, I look very Latina, right? And even I sound. And to the point that sometimes I'm in a big conference, and a conference will have 10,000 people, and I have a session within that conference. And I have to anchor myself and say, I'm Latina, I'm going to mesmerize you with my accent, because even then I get feedback about my accent, right? So it's like, even there, I can embrace my gran yo soy in a beautiful way Although my inner critics will say, hey, last time they mentioned that, or you're not enough to even be in that stage.
Mhm.
Um, when I look at Gran Yo Soy, I essentially look at what I said, explore yourself in the self-awareness and also in the way the self-knowledge. And there are a couple of drivers there. There are a couple of areas and dimensions that you looked at. Then it's like embody, right? In that embodiment, I said there's a lot of self-acceptance and self kind of respect. And in that self-acceptance, it's not about autoestima, it's more a autovalía, no? It's this distinction that you really need to understand and looking inwards and develop even those muscles, because we don't. Like, I come from a very culture that is patriarchal. So I didn't have a say as a little girl. I also was so sick, right? So I have to work extra to perform. I have limited resources. One of the things, I make magic. I'm a magician. I used to have carry my water because I had to pour out water and have buckets and put it in a bigger thing when I was little. And I remember dreaming, I'm going to travel the world and people will listen what I say. I mean, in that environment, dreaming at that time that I will go around the world and people will listen to me, that was really bold. And I think that carried me out even today. And now from out of the generosity of the things I explore, so I want to keep leaders. I want to make sure they can be better people, better leaders, better person. Out of that generosity of serving others, I found my grand joy. But it was looking even at my inner child. And lastly, it's expressing the way you self-care and self-project yourself. That is those three moments of really understanding Gran Yo Soy. Hopefully that resonates with some of the United Latina women that are listening today.
Yeah. Yep. So let's break down what is Yo Soy. What is that?
Yeah, it is your true essence. There at some point in your life, you became this person, bless your ancestors, and you are this dreamer. You were making this magic, this essence, like me when I was little. And throughout, your inner critics came into place, and the judge, the hypercritical, hyper rational, the controller, a couple of things that came into place, and also your limiting beliefs that sometimes you have a clear book bag and your parents, and you learn from them, some tools, and you put it in your bag and they limit you some way. So you have to reclaim and look inside, what is it that you are truly, go back to that inner child, la niña interior, and reclaim that, because you're still there. She's still there.
Yeah.
Also contextualize, right? What today we have built connections, and throughout the connections, people have a perception of yourself. Like, I go back and I see someone at Harvard Business School when I worked before, and they say, hey, I remember you had a baby. Oh, I remember you live in Revere, Massachusetts. And then, like, I'm no longer there. Like, many things happen along the way. But what is truly about me, I do care. I do care deeply about people. I connect with people, and I'm a bridge builder. Those three things flourish when I'm in connection, and that true essence of who I am,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So it's that discovery of that. It
Yeah.
takes a lot, and I'm happy to have conversations that women want to discover some of the
Yeah.
don't even. I'm happy to do that with some of my colleagues here.
Yep, yep. All right, so let's dive a little deeper into you, right? So not because there's a point where we evolve to that, right? So, pero who is Madeline? Who is Madeline?
Yeah.
Right? So give us like you, your essence.
Yep. Anytime you will interact with Madeline and know Madeline, you will know that I do care about you. I try to have conversations that get me connected with people. That's who am I. I currently and easily I can go to my roles. I am a mom of two kids, right? And these two kids, and I was telling you before we came online, One of them has special needs, and he was nonverbal. He said nonverbal, never looked at my eyes. And who's Madeline? Someone that want to connect with you, and I care. There's so much I did with this kid that he can talk. He's now literally a couple minutes ago, I received an email that he's on the honor roll of the school. Is believing in others' potential. And I care, and I truly believe that, even with my kids. So I see it on my kids. I see it in many places I worked. I left footprint of people, the way they were and the way I left. Somehow they remember me. They remember the interaction that I care, and I want them to grow.
Yeah.
So those are things that I can see them personally. And I'm an advocate in Massachusetts. I advocate for parents. I have a book club for 5 years. Every Monday, someone said, every Monday you meet? Every Monday I made a commitment. Why? Because there's a special needs parents, especially moms, that need to be connected, that they need to dream differently, be equipped. So it's those things that keep me going, even on those roles that I gave you 3 roles, for example.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So let's go into your inner critic, right?
Yeah,
Everybody's got one.
yeah.
It's part of our beingness. So how do we leverage our inner critic to empower us to own our self-identity? Right?
Yep, let's do that. I'm going to ask a couple of noticing moments. I'm going to be telling you a couple noticing moments. There were noticing moments for me, and I'm going to share them. And I'm going to ask you, if you're listening now or later, that you raise literally your virtual hand and notice how many times you raise your hand when I make these statements, okay? So statement number 1 is raise your hand if you ever felt that you got lucky in your career, and at some point someone is going to find out that you maybe don't know anything and you're like not that amazing. Raise your hand if you're always, one unexpected call of, yes, they're going to praise me, followed by interesting feedback, right? Raise your hand if you compare yourself to others and feel others are better and even more intelligent than you. Raise your hand if your performance determines your sense of worth and even how you feel about yourself. Raise your hand if you keep saying yes and piling on things and you never have enough time to do it, but you sacrifice things to get more work done. If you can go on a vacation without stressing about work, and even when you come back, you're more exhausted, raise your hand. Finally, are you raising your hand? Let me know.
One person did. One person did.
All right. External validation to see, hey, I'm good enough, even in a personal circle, on your job. Or what is next? Not even you're finishing a milestone and not even celebrating that. And you're like, what's next to make me happy? What's next to achieve? What if you raise your hand because you have a lot of lack of confidence and you say, hey, there's more people senior in the room than me. And now you're like in this moment, like, oh my goodness, I don't belong here, right?
Yeah.
Lastly, if you feel like you're in this hamster wheel, sometimes we are in this beautiful jail made of gold in our profession, but no matter, nothing is enough and nothing is fulfilling. Out of the 10, how many hands you raised, right? And I will ask, which one hit home hardest for you, right? So inner critics are present, and I will say I experience most of them. If I tell you that some of the things when leaders have one dimension, fear of failure, right? Fear of failure is probably more than almost 50% at the C-suite and almost 50% at director level. Or feeling the imposter syndrome actually is bigger at the C-suite, like a larger percentage, and even at director level. But they all feel it. They all experience that. So inner critics are present. They are actually good for you. There's voices that talk to you, and they are here for you, make you safe, right? So don't allow them. How do you leverage them, right? There's a couple of things, empathize with them. You need to navigate them. You need to have kind of action oriented. Let's say, for example, which one did you resonated, Sandra? Be vulnerable.
I mean, I'm at a point where none of those right now because I know practices already to get past that. But I have been, like, to give an example, like when I
Mhm.
first started in my professional career, I remember being the only Latina in a room full of men. And I had ideas and I had vision and I had like potential solutions. Y me quedé calladita because I was like, I thought what you did. I was in my early 20s. I was like, these men probably know way more than me, and my ideas are probably not good enough. When I knew, eventually, I proved myself and everybody otherwise, right? When I implemented them, but there is that thinking, right? And that's kind of the one of the core visions behind United Latinas is because I don't want women to be in a room where they feel inferior to anybody or they feel their ideas are not valid, because the more that we stay quiet, the less the world is beautifully evolved. I think we have beautiful potential and ideas, and if we stay quiet and we don't execute them and we don't learn the power of our voice, then yeah, I think it's bad for business. I think corporations should be doing more about this, but we could get into that we could dive into that at a whole workshop. But yeah, that's an example. Definitely been in a round table where I'm like, these are all, Anglo men who probably know more than me. And I was wrong. I was wrong to think that. That was a negative on the company, you know?
Thank you, Sandra. And that is true. I personally have a big judge, no? And I still, I call it fulanito. Ahí viene fulanito, no? I recognize him, I'm embrace what do you need to take, but I'm on the driver's seat. And that's essentially you reposition them in a sense that you acknowledge them, you hear them. What is
Yeah,
it that you need to say? No, you're Latina, you're gonna be in front of X, Y, and Z in the next conference. Do you really gonna perform up to the level? And I listen to that. I say, yeah, I will perform to the level, right? It's like, what are you trying? So is it like a fear behind it or not? But I can have in the past a lot of self-negative talk. Like I will never talk to anyone the way I will talk to myself. And I don't
yeah.
know if you've been there, your judge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are our hardest critics. We are
Exactly.
the one that are hardest on ourselves. We can be kind to the world and then we beat ourselves up. So,
And
yeah.
on top of that, I that's the big judge. On top of that, I hyper vigilant, and it's some of the things like I'm here, I'm looking at here, and also restless. I can be doing many things. And what is it? If you are kind of like an strickler person, essentially you push too hard, you overcritical, you perfectionist. But on the other side, you feeling to be perfect because you really want to have integrity. You're very principled and even you have precise and detailed. So once you understand those two realms of work, you say, hey, I put this energy drainer that will not edificar a nadie, and now I can use it to my advantage on
Yeah.
those strengths in that inner. That's how you leverage if you
Do
are.
you think do you think our culture makes us want to be perfect, Like, do you think it's a cultural thing, or it can happens with amongst,
No, it
or
happened. I can see it. I have seen it across. One of
yeah.
the beautiful research I found was based in Stanford about inner critics. They had 500,000 people being part of the study, Stanford athletes and people across 50 countries. And those surface, essentially, it was across these inner critics were shared among all this population that was part of the study. And I think it goes across culture. Now Latino, we tend, yes, more perfectionists. Like you most have, you don't lift up in conversations. Parents used to say, hey, what is wrong, what's wrong, and you need to push harder, at least generations before. And our generation, as you mentioned earlier, it's not that you're crazy, it's that you're the first. So you have more self leadership, more tools, You're more equipping yourself with new things in self-leadership, in the way you want to move forward. And it sometimes, am I crazy? Am I defying my own culture? And essentially, no, it's just because we are the first. We are the first. So how can you leverage a couple of things? I will say, if you reframing, let's say feedback. Feedback is hard. It's one of the things that will make you impact, but I'll say use what I call plan a tree. When is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. But today is the second best time. So today, listen to the feedback. It is not a message delivered to you. It's actually a way and a tool to take a pulse. And that has getting me in the long run where I am today. The work I do, I have an idea. I put the idea out and there's a concept. So there's reviewers that give me feedback. Then there's a draft. As another set, give me feedback. And there's the outline and the things going on. And then I have a final product which become a research. I have many reviews and many feedbacks. And you can say, hey, I can take a personal. No, it is about the design. Take your work as a product designer. You try to enhance with the feedback. You take what you insightfully you think will build up. Then I go to a presentation. So now my research go to a presentation. Guess what? Presentation feedback on the style and work and the storytelling. And then I have to try run it. I have a lot of before I go to a conference. So feedback is for me a tool, and positive reinforcement. Take it. We don't take the liberty to say, hey, that's positive. Now I'm gonna keep reinforcing this because it's positive. We tend as a Latina also go to overanalyzing what I call the negative. So those are a couple of tools there. Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing also I will say, I know we land in the airplane soon. And you can see there's a lot to cover, but it's reframing goals. There's a lot of time I find women from all walks, and sometimes they don't know what is it that they want. Even like 70 years, like I did so many hats. I served so many hats that I lost myself and I didn't know even what I wanted. Have the clarity of reflection. I will say, take your time. Seek that journey and know the destination. Yes, performance goals are driven by status and achievement, but there's also learning goals. And there's a whole, wealth of research about learning and where that intrinsic motivation goes. But think about a goal you want to achieve in the next 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Write all the steps necessary in achieving the goal, but especially where do you feel stuck? Write 5 decisions around, what are things that will be easy for me to get, into if I make this decision, like break it down and put a deadline, like self-aware of that journey rather than, I need to go and shoot for that.
Yeah.
So reframing goals is another tool because inner critics will be loud and clear.
Yeah.
Inner critics, they don't like goals.
Yeah.
And those voices come and give you a lot of input. But once you tackle that in reframing the goals, I think it is helpful.
Yep, yep. Definitely clarity on our goals, right? I love that you shared that because most people don't walk around with an intentional direction of like, this is what I'm going after every single day, right? Cuando nos levantamos in the morning, we have to know what is it that we're going to accomplish for that day, And for me, like the inner critic, whenever I feel that in any moment, and for anybody watching this, like, I think we need to remind ourselves, who we are. Yesterday at our leadership meeting, I shared something that I've given talks about in the past, but particularly is who we are, right? Our purpose here, our power. And when next to the word power, I wrote made in the image of, right? And most people, what are we made in the image of? Right. And I had this conversation with my son the other day because he was going through something, something emotional, was going through a tough time. And as a parent, we absorb that. Right. So I'm talking to him and trying to work with him and show him love and empathy, of course. But what are we made in the image of? You know, most people say we're made in the image of God, but it's not God in the skin, two eyes, two ears. He's got hands, he's got legs. We're not made, when we hear that expression, we're made in the image of, is not literal in that way, but we are made in the image of the power of God, the power of creating our life, the power of real, truly having the capacity with our mind and with our hearts to live out and create the world before us. That happens because of us, because we were made in the image of the power and the grace of God. You know, whatever that is for you, right? Every religion, because I have every religious book in my library here, because I'm passionate about that. But because it's about who I was, it was through my need for self-discovery. You know, that's the journey I went through. Well, what religion is right? Which one's wrong? Why are these people saying they're right or they're more worthy? Todo eso. So that was my route of education. Is I dove into books of spirituality, of real concepts. And when we think about, like, for me, every time I'm going through something and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a little nervous to give this talk, or I don't know what, for some reason, right? Because those jitters, y eso that comes up, right? So I'm like, you know, there's been times where I'm like, oh my God, I have no worries of it. Like, oh, I can't wait to do that talk. I can't wait to do it. Y después el día, I'm like, oh God, I got a little, like, you know, I'm a little nervous here today. And which is okay, right? That makes us human and that makes us beautiful. But I always think, like, Sandra, remind yourself, hold up, you know, we are them, they are us, right? There's no one out there that is far superior in any way to you, right? We are all the same living beings, are made in the image of power, you know, which is, we need to remind ourselves that, you know, I am beautiful, I am strong, I am divine, you know, I am made in the image of source energy that is profoundly powerful. So how can we doubt ourselves when we have those thoughts in our minds, you know? So that's what, like, checks me, right? When it's like, okay, snap back out of it, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, you know, I don't know, I'm a little worried about this thing. But then we have to remind ourselves to check ourselves, to say, hold up, who are you, Sandra? You are divine and you got power in you, and you are here to bless these people or to do this thing, you know, to impact and to empower and to whatever you're doing, even if it's to volunteer to do something, you know, cualquier cosa, right? We have to remind ourselves what our potential and our power is. And despite, you will continuously have imposter syndrome. I hear that from some of the top speakers across the country. Todavía hoy, they say, I get jittery and I'm nervous before I go on stage and before I do this. But it's like every day-to-day life in our professional environments, we want women to feel like whenever they feel that sense of imposter syndrome, that, like, hold up, remind yourself who you are, you know, who we are, and the power that here in the life that we are, with goals, right? With our intentional goal, who is it that we want to be? And we want to be the best version of ourselves, and then kill that imposter syndrome, right?
At the end of the day, you become the story you're telling yourself.
True.
So you look at these inner critics, or you look at the fears you have inside of you. I will ask you, do affirmations. I'll give you the last tool of the day.
Yeah.
And I do that every 3 months. The fear that I'm not there. Yo no soy eso, but I become that an affirmation. And then for 3 months, you look at me, I have a yellow paper, la glándula pineal, ponerla allí, and, really get into that embody moment. And for example, my gran yo soy, and I know in Spanish, it's like, yo soy mujer que trasciende, yo soy mamá presente, yo soy una líder que conecta, y soy una mujer que se disfruta su relación con Dios. Those 4 things, I'm not there, and there's so many fears around it. But these months until June 15, I am telling myself all these. And by the way, there's so many signals now, the universe and God is opening. It's like, yes, that's you. Now I'm getting conversation around that. I'm like, okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it works. It works.
Give yourself a chance to tell yourself another story.
Yeah.
Tell yourself another story. You're a storyteller. You're a magician. No, it's magia. So yourself to be more flexible. Allow yourself to look at the intelligence that you really need to work on. It's not your destiny. It's actually, you can change chapters and write new chapters
Yeah.
in your story. Mujeres son empoderadas without limit and most powerful. One small, do we need, I think we need to close, yes?
Yes, we're closing soon. Yep.
Okay,
Finish
so
your thought and then, yeah.
to finish, the London team was not the rowing. You know, in Boston, there's so many sports, and I follow things, and I follow the rowing teams. And the London team was not even able to, as a team, to row and win any game for many years. And they said, we have to put a filter. We have to do whatever it takes us to row faster. So Queen Elizabeth invited them? No, you know, but the other country invited us? Yes. So they put a filter of commitment of the things they needed to get to the next step, to make them progress. And you know what? When they did that for a year with that level of discipline and being committed to each other in that sense, with that filter, they went to Sydney and won gold. My thing is here, which filter do you need to put today to get you to win, to leverage and win that inner critic, to go again and say, hey, that fear that I have, I conquer it, to change the story, to shift it, and essentially to progress towards finding yourself. If you need to talk to me, I'm here. Just message me through LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with any United Latina. Your power is in you. El poder de yo soy. Somos mujeres latinas unidas. There's a lot significance in that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Madeline, for joining me today for this cafecito. And yes, cafecito. Yes, ya me terminé el mío. So, but thank you so much. This has been great. And for those of you watching, make sure that you're connected with us. Join us in our Mighty Hub if you're not already in there, unitedlatinas.mn.co. And join our network. Be part of what we're building here and learn the tools if you don't have the tools yet to really be the person and the individual that you know that you are meant to be, because you are meant to be a lot more than you think right now, this moment, literally. It's literal. So thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care and be well.